We knew the 2021 running back class wasn't going to be the strongest. Apparently, NFL teams agreed. It was not a pretty sight, the NFL draft, as running backs kept falling down the board. For fantasy purposes, what does this mean? Well, instead of doing our top 10 rankings, we're just going to go down and see which running backs are actually even going to be relevant at all for fantasy. So, Chris, let's start with the top. It's clear now Najee Harris is the #1 running back in this class. Do you feel like he can be a workhorse back and maybe even RB2, RB1 type for fantasy?
Yeah, he'll definitely be a workhorse. That's the good news for Najee Harris here, is he's stepping in to an immediate workhorse role. Should be looking at 15 to 20 touches every single week, no doubt about it. The downside is that offensive line is still one of the worst in the NFL, especially when it comes to run blocking. Look, I think Najee is a great player, but behind that offensive line, he's certainly going to be limited as far as fantasy goes. I don't see him at all in any way as an RB1, a top 12 running back. I think more like in that 15-ish range is probably where he'll sit. Sure, he'll have some nice games, of course. Maybe games where he scores a couple touchdowns. But most of the weeks, I think he's going to be in kind of that 15 range. And look, that's as good as it gets in this rookie class. So that should tell you all you need to know about the running backs and what happened on draft day. That our top rookie running back is probably going to be a mid to high RB2 in 2021.
Yeah, it feels almost like deja vu because I remember last year, people always overvalue rookies, right? Especially at the running back position. And last year was a fairly good class. We had some guys at the top and we were saying, Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor, I said those guys are going to be overvalued. DeAndre Swift, there was not an obvious way that you're going to see that they were all going to be necessarily fantasy starters week in, week out. And it proved to be true, right? Edwards-Helaire kind of turned out to be a bust. DeAndre Swift, had his moments, but for the most part, you can rely on him. Well, this class we knew wasn't that strong going in. And now I think everyone's basically going to be overvalued, including Harris, because everyone says, okay, Pittsburgh, that's a team that can run the ball. That was the old Pittsburgh Steelers, okay? Like you said, this is not going to be the same with that offensive line. And if anybody expecting Le'Veon Bell 2.0 is going to be very disappointed. His ADP is going to be way overinflated. So I'm probably not going to have any part of him because I see him exactly the way you do, kind of a mid-range RB2. And then Travis Etienne was expected to be the next most valuable running back and went to, I'd say, probably one of the worst landing spots possible, Jacksonville, which is a really surprising pick. First, let's dissect the fact that Urban Meyer, the coach, is saying he's a third down back. It seems absurd. It's ridiculous. But what do you take away from that? Is that just smoke, or you think that really this is going to turn into a massive waste of a draft pick?
I definitely think there's some smoke there. I don't think Urban Meyer took Travis Etienne with this very next pick after Trevor Lawrence to have him be a third down back. I think he has bigger plans for him than that. But James Robinson was really good last year. And I know James Robinson's an undrafted free agent. I know Urban Meyer has no commitment to him, but it wasn't like James Robinson was a scrub last year and Etienne is significantly better. Do I think Etienne is better than James Robinson? Of course. But I do think James Robinson is still going to have a role. Obviously, James Robinson's role significantly lessened now. And don't forget about Carlos Hyde. The actual quote was, Carlos Hyde and James Robinson will be the 1-2 punch. So he actually listed Carlos Hyde first, and Carlos Hyde is an Urban Meyer guy. I look at this as like a three-way committee. Yeah, Etienne probably gets, 55, 60% of the touches while Hyde and Robinson split the rest, but that's not what you're looking for, your number 2 rookie running back. You don't want a guy who's just barely getting 55, 60% of the touches. So yeah, not great for Etienne at all, landing in Jacksonville.
The way I look at it, hearing some of the things that Meyer's been saying and some of the picks that they did make after Trevor Lawrence is all the excitement you have post-draft about getting a guy like Lawrence, a generational quarterback, is now you may be a little concerned about the coach you hired. But let's see how things play out. And Etienne, either way, though, just massively disappointing. You have to fade him pretty hard. And Robinson, that's the great thing. It just killed the fancy value of 2 running backs with 1 pick. And kind of did that with Javonte Williams. Chris, I know you've been all over Melvin Gordon in these early best ball drafts, and seeing him as a really solid kind of late zero RB pick. And now between Javonte Williams going to Denver and Melvin Gordon still being there, is it the same thing? I mean, do you think that this is going to be kind of a 1-2 punch where both guys are just committee backs? Or do you see this kind of like a passing of the guard? Javonte Williams is going to be the guy with Melvin Gordon, the veteran who they gave a lot of money to, just kind of sitting there watching the rookie. I don't see that happening.
No, I think it could be. I almost want to compare it to Jonathan Taylor last year, but it's not the same because Marlon Mack went down week 1. Maybe more like Ingram and Dobbins, where, Ingram handled was a starter for most of the season. And then finally towards the end, they gave Dobbins most of the run. But the problem here is, Denver will throw to the running backs. I mean, they're not like a team that throws to the running backs a ton, but certainly more than Baltimore, who doesn't really throw to the running backs at all. And Melvin Gordon is a very good pass catcher. And from what we saw in college, Javonte Williams is not. So, best case, Javonte Williams is looking at the lead down role with Melvin Gordon coming in on third down. So, once again, not a great spot for a guy. A lot of people thought he was the best running back in this class because that's what happens as the offseason winds on. The clear-cut number one guy becomes, the number 3 guy, and the number 3 guy becomes the number 1 guy. But wherever you had him ranked, this is not a great situation. Maybe next year it will be better because I do believe Melvin Gordon is not under contract next year. So if Denver moves on for him, then maybe Javonte Williams will step into a larger role. But for 2021, this isn't good. You got to think it's going to be a 50-50 split. Could even be, more leaning towards Melvin Gordon earlier in the season. And then, like I said, as the season goes on, more towards Williams. But yeah, it's going to be frustrating in 2021 with him for sure.
Agree, because, Dynasty, you shouldn't be too discouraged about Williams. That's kind of a young offense that's coming up. Of course, they maybe need a quarterback at some point. That would have been maybe logical for them to do is pick their quarterback of the future, Justin Fields, somebody like that. I don't know, just shooting names out there. But for redraft at this point, you cannot be encouraged about Williams. And this definitely drops his ADP a couple of rounds at least from where you would have expected. This is a guy, like you said, doesn't catch a lot of passes. That's not his thing. He's not a complete 3-down back. He would need to get the bulk of the carry somewhere. And with Melvin Gordon there's no way that's happening, at least not for the first half of the season. So I think J.K. Dobbins' situation is the best case scenario for him. So, I mean, man, it just keeps getting worse. And then let's go to probably the most optimistic hope here for a running back to be the man is Michael Carter. But let's be honest, he was a 4th-round pick. How many 4th-round picks really produced last year? You talk about guys like Joshua Kelly, who had the chance and just blew it. I mean, he just looked terrible. Anthony McFarland, who really didn't do a whole lot last year either. LaMichael Pirine, who is now being replaced by Michael Carter. His chances of Carter now kind of being a stud, whether in real life or fantasy, are pretty slim. So I'm feeling he's also going to be overdrafted.
Yeah, because on the one side, he went to, other than Najee Harris, he went to the one spot where, he has very little competition for touches, right? We're talking about LaMichael Pirine, Ty Johnson, and 27, 28-year-old Tevin Coleman. But like you said, he fell to the 4th round. I know people are going to say, well, what about Aaron Jones? What about Chris Carson? What about this guy? What about that guy? Those guys are the exception, right? They're the rare guys that we remember. And for every one of those guys, there's 10 to 15 that don't ever make it in the NFL. That's just the way it works after the 3rd round. Like, it really, really is a severe drop off after the 3rd round in terms of success in the NFL. So, yeah, good spot for him in terms of the fact that, he could fight for those touches, but at the same time, is he really any better than any of those guys currently on the roster? I don't think so. I think this is going to be like some kind of 3-headed committee where they're just running in a bunch of guys week to week. It's a complete headache. So to me, Michael Carter, I mean, even in Dynasty, I think his value just took a massive, massive hit.
Now, a lot of people are interested in Trey Sermon because of the system he landed in. That would be Kyle Shanahan's offense in San Francisco. But the problem here is he's competing with like 5 other running backs now. They had Raheem Mostert. We were kind of high on Jeff Wilson, thinking he might have a chance to replicate what he did late in the season last year. They brought in Wayne Gallman. They have JaMychal Hasty still from last year. There's a lot of mouths all of a sudden to feed in that backfield. Somebody's got to go. But as far as who stays, I mean, do you really think that Sermon will have enough touches to be fantasy relevant, as good as the landing spot might appear?
Yeah, this is for sure the best run blocking system for him. But I do worry, like, Mostert, when he's been on the field, has been very, very good in this offense. JaMychal Hasty, I think he'll probably get cut. They also drafted Elijah Mitchell, if I'm not mistaken. But he was drafted, I think, in like the 5th round, so no guarantee he makes it. So I do think best case for Trey Sermon, he's splitting with Raheem Mostert. Maybe Jeff Wilson stays on for some depth, but yeah, it's great as far as, he's in that zone run blocking scheme that's perfect for his skill set. But I think Mostert is just better than he is, to be honest. I really do. I mean, this is a guy who in his entire college career had 3 monster games and didn't really do anything else in college. So I'm not just going to bank on those 3 huge games and say that's who he is. So yeah, another situation where just a miserable landing spot and just a terrible situation for another rookie running back.
That's a great point too. I mean, this is just such an odd year. We have so many guys who either didn't play at all or had limited snaps in 2020 for obvious reasons, COVID and opting out. And so we're left with a small sample size and wondering if it's even going to translate to the pros. And so you don't have somebody like Jonathan Taylor's prolific college career. And I mean, you really don't know what's going to happen. And again, it's just amazing that teams like the Dolphins, who seem to have a need at running back, very little depth, did take a running back, and a team like the Niners, who have 5 already on hand, are taking a running back in the middle rounds. It's just bizarre. So then, are there any late round guys that you're interested in? Most of these guys after round 4, the chances of running back as a rookie hitting, much less even making the roster, are slim. But there's always somebody who breaks through. Last year, we saw an undrafted guy like James Robinson. So who do you think might be a pick that holds your interest as far as somebody who has a chance to break through, whether it's because, they leapfrog somebody on the depth chart, they just prove to be worthy of the NFL roster or what have you. So who's the guy that you're interested in? Because we even saw guys like Kenneth Gainwell, who we thought might be, a 3rd, 4th round pick, fall behind Miles Sanders. We saw, Chuba Hubbard. A lot of people thought he might be kind of a workhorse back in the NFL. Well, now he's stuck behind CMC, so good luck finding any touches there. Is there anybody who stands out to you?
I wouldn't say stands out, no. I do kind of like Gainwell simply because I think he can leapfrog Boston Scott and have a role in this offense alongside Miles Sanders, especially in the passing game. And we do know Miles Sanders has missed games, I think, pretty much every year of his career. So it could be a situation where he is thrust into that starting role. And we know he can handle a 3-down role, or at least he did in college. So there's a chance he can handle a 3-down role, but really not really. Like you said, when guys are falling to the 5th, 6th, 7th round, it is extremely rare, that these guys make it, that they become fantasy viable. So no, I'm pretty much out on all the rest of them.
Yeah, look, there's no reason in redraft to have interest in any of these guys. Honestly, the only rookie you should really be looking at is Najee Harris, and I have a feeling he's going to go higher than he should. If there's a dart I want to throw, probably just talking about dynasty or best ball here, might actually be somebody who nobody was talking about. That's Chris Evans out of Michigan. So the simple fact he landed in Cincinnati, and Joe Mixon, has known to get hurt at times. They don't have Gio Bernard anymore. They don't really have a lot of depth there, running back. So with that offense now on the uptick, Joe Burrow coming back and more receivers in the mix like Jamar Chase, it's possible that he is a guy that kind of comes to the forefront at some point. But again, this is just a kind of total lottery ticket at this point. So talking about a running back apocalypse, man, this rookie RB class is rough. It's going to be rough for fantasy. We're going to guide you all offseason long, try to help you steer clear of the overvalued prospects like what we've seen. All right, guys, give us a like, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for checking us out.